Hello, Wayne.
Kim, how are you, my friend? Long time no see. Have you got sunshine where you are? Because it's freezing cold here in Melbourne.
Well, it's freezing cold here in Perth, Western Australia, but we got blue sky, and that's why it's cold, because there's no cloud cover to keep
Ah,
the heat in, and it's freezing cold. But I'm here, ready to chat with you and have my morning protein shake.
fantastic. Protein. How often have you been having protein shakes for?
It's coming up to 34 and a half years, nearly 35 years. One of the key things in is to first thing in the morning is to get protein into your system.
Oh,
And
but obviously you're Greek, and
yes,
Greeks don't just wake up and have protein shakes. There must have been a reason you got on the protein shakes. I mean,
well,
34 years. So you're now what, 48 years of age? So what, at age 18 you started? Is that what it?
thank you. I mean, yeah, yes, please. I'm 72.
Oh,
I started in when I was 37, I think 37 years of age. Um, I had a friend of mine that came to me and said, Kim, you're fat and you're ugly. And I said, thank you very much. Only your best friend can call you ugly. And I was going through a bad time at that point in my life. I was always very ambitious, very young. I was very lucky. I had a couple of early mentors that, that got me to set goals. One of them, the world renowned business philosopher Jim Rohn, said, your first goal should be to become financially free, financially independent. And I said, well, what's that? He said, well, look, it's your ability to cover your living costs from your own resources, not having to rely on a boss or somebody else, that you could do that. And I thought to myself, well, how am I going to do that? I mean, uh, what can I do? At that point, I said to myself, well, if I had $5 million, I could buy a commercial property that would give me, a 10% yield. That would give me, $500,000 a year in rental income. And at the same time, be going up in, capital gain. Uh, and I could live on $500,000 a year. But I didn't have $5 million. So I thought, okay, how am I going to do that? What am I going to do? And by the way, I sat down with Jim Rohn. I said, well, Jim, I've got my goals, I've got my journal here, and I'm doing all this. How come I'm not rich? And he said, well, have you read Think and Grow Rich? I said, yes. He said, how many times? I said, once. He said, okay. Uh, he said, well, I've read it 13 times. Must read it again. He said, and there's another point. He said, how many times have you read The Richest Man in Babylon? And I said, once. And he said, well, I've read it 13 times. And that's where I went to. I went to that book, and in there, Arcad, the camel dealer, said, make thy home thy investment. So my focus was people made money either in the stock market or in property. So my focus was I'm going to get into property. I'm going to get into the property market.
but your background, I mean, were your parents in business? Did they have, like, as a young man, like, did you go to university? Did you get that education and say, oh, I mean, you got a commerce degree or something like that, did you? Or
No, no. I was very lucky. I had European parents. My mother's Greek. My stepfather's German. They bought they left their jobs, and they worked very long, hard hours, and they left their jobs and bought a delicatessen in Adelaide, South Australia. And I was brought up by coming home from school to fill up the Coca-Cola machines and fill up, and I watched them. I watched them how they treated their customers. I watched them how hard they worked, and they had that independence. They didn't have to rely on anybody. And I thought that's what I want to do. So I had that scripting, I suppose, from my parents.
okay, so you must have tried a few things growing up. I mean, you and I often talk, and you go Kelly's Woodyard. So did you have a hardware store or something like that, or what did you do? Well, give us the history for the people watching this, say for the first time, looking at you now, going, okay, so what kind of businesses did you have?
Well, I looked at mum and dad's business and I thought, well, where's the most of the profit? And it was in the books and the cards, and like birthday cards and so forth. They had a 33% margin of profit, and books had that sort of up to 50%. And I thought, well, that's what I'll open up Kim's Books and Stationery. Now, I was only 19. I failed every subject in year 11 except geography. But, I thought to myself, I know everything. At the age of 19, you think you know everything. And I opened my first business, and
Oh, so you signed a lease.
I signed a lease. I knew that I had to try to keep the costs down, and I signed a lease. I found a place very close to where mum and dad had their business, and it was only $13 a week rental. And I thought, that's fantastic. That's nothing. That's unbelievable. Remember, this is nearly over 50 years ago. So, $13 was still a fair bit of money. But the reason why it was so cheap was nobody could stop. It was actually at an intersection of five roads and a traffic light. So everybody could see this fantastic sign that said Kim's Books and Stationery, but nobody could stop. And I thought to myself, okay, what am I going to do? And that's where I used to close it up every day, and I went door knocking, door to door, all the businesses, and said, hi, my name's Kim Bromer. I'm from Kim's Books and Stationery. I can deliver any of your stationery. I can help you. And I actually started getting orders in that regard and in that way. So that was my first business opportunity.
Door to door.
Door to door.
Wow. And did anyone ever walk into like the store, or you were hustling out in the street, so to speak?
Well, a few people would walk past, not many. I had mainly young people that would come in and want to listen to some of the records that we had on the stand and so forth. But not to mention, it was from the business. And by the way, at the end of 1 year, I was very lucky. I signed only a 1 year lease with options. And so that's something, if you're trying something brand new, make sure that you only, lease it for a certain short period of time with options. So if it doesn't work so well, you've got the ability to get out. And that's what I had, because at the end of 1 year, I worked out, my accountants gave me they said that you're making about the same amount that you were making working as an employee for one of the department stores to what you were earning in business. So it was the same amount, but I was free. But I learned some lessons. And actually what happened is that one of the clients that I had, which were insurance brokers, they said, well, what are you going to do when you close down? What are you going to do? And I said, well, I don't know. I'm just looking at other things. They said, you should come and work with us. We operate an insurance brokerage. You can work on commission only. Again, that's your own business, not a salary, not an income. In other words, I had the opportunity to earn as much as I wanted to based on what my goals were. And that got me into sales, got me into the insurance industry. And I went from step by step into many, many different businesses. And as I was mentioning about getting into property, I looked at for 2 states, the highest growth states, which were, and by the way, to me, it was either Queensland or Western Australia. They had Brisbane and Perth, they had the highest growth states. And as far as property was concerned, as far as population increase. So I said, I'm going to choose Perth. And that's where I came to. I came to Perth and got involved I didn't want to be a real estate agent. I wanted to be a developer. So I bought a property and then looked at putting 8 units on that property, residential, and then sold them off the plan to make my first profit. I went from one project to another. My whole focus was to accumulate $5 million.
How old were you then?
Sorry?
How old were you then when you were
at that time, it was sort of like maybe 33 years of age. And from 33 to 37, it was I went from residential property into commercial. I understood that property didn't go up always. I had to be diversified. I looked at the old trade cycle clock, which said that if the stock market goes down, property goes up. And I thought, okay, well, I've got to also get into the stock market. I invested some money in a stockbroking company back then, 25% of the stockbroking company. And then I got involved with some rural interests. I had a liquor store. So I was looking for cash flow at the same time, because most of my property projects was, it's like a wheelbarrow business. Make money while you're pushing the wheelbarrow, put the wheelbarrow down, stop making money. So you've got to pick it up again and push it again. So, it needed to do that next project to get into the next project. And
You would have lost your freedom as well. I mean, tied to all these businesses.
yes, tied to all the business. I remember I took my family on a trip to the US, and then to Germany, to the UK, and then Germany and Greece. And my first leg went to Disneyland, and then to New York. And then I got the phone call from the company going, listen, we need you back here. Please come back, come back. We've got these problems here with the financiers. We need you to make sure that we get this across the line. So I had to leave my family to continue on while I flew back to Australia. And my family went on to UK, then went on to Frankfurt, then went on to Greece. And I was back running the business. So I had no freedom. I was, not only the constraints of the government and constraints of how business is traditionally run, but you've got employees that you've got to make sure they can meet payroll, 17.5% loadings, their superannuation, all those things that you had to make sure. And we were going through a recession at that time. Interest rates were going up. We're trying to put things together. And for me to come back for that project was, if we didn't get the finance for that project, things could have started to collapse. And we were highly geared, and we continued on. We worked through that, but at the end, it got to a point where interest rates went to 23, 24% compound. House mortgages was 17%. I mean, people are complaining today that they're 4.5%, 5%. People were still buying properties at 16 and 17%. And I'm trying to keep everything together. In the end, everything collapsed. I ended up losing.
And that was a recession, the recession we had to have, I suppose.
Yeah, the recession that we had to have. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I ended up losing 13 million of my money, 8 million the bank's money, and was under a lot of stress, wasn't eating properly, and gained a lot of weight. It's where my friend came in with you're fat and you're ugly.
And that's where the protein shakes kicked in.
It's where the protein shakes kicked in. He said, I can help you lose your weight, but more importantly, I can help you regain your wealth. And I said,
Well, let me ask a couple of quick questions here, because we're getting to know a little bit what makes Kim Broma tick now. I mean, the wellness industry. I mean, if you've seen a lot of things in your time, but let's just hone in on that market. Let's say protein shakes alone. There's protein shakes everywhere. I mean, it's unbelievable how the whole world's now on protein shakes, because you're starting to understand. But people now want to live long. They want to live healthy. That's if they're of right, sane mind. They don't want to spend the last period of their life on some kind of drug or medication. But I think people are now looking to how to personalize their their products to get exactly what they need. So when you look at that industry, I know that's something that you chose to say, hey, there's opportunity here.
Look, even back 35 years ago, everybody wanted to look better and feel better. It was all, although protein shakes wasn't the norm. They looked at you like, what are you doing? I mean, can't you get that from food? But the problem is that, we couldn't get the nutrition from the food we eat, because we grow everything too fast. And when I looked at it, I said, well, if everybody's wanting to look better and feel better, then there's a product that can help people lose weight, help people gain weight. Hey, and give the body all its nutrition that it requires. This is a growth industry. And it's continued on over the years. Then it went into sports nutrition and of course longevity now. I mean, people look at me and they go, Kim, 72, really? And I can say, I look at my brother, half brother. He's 11 years younger than me, and I look younger than him. So, I know the products work. My skin got better. I stayed young. I'm not really a 72. I'm not letting that number affect me. So today, everybody's wanting that personalized nutrition, and personalized medicine is going down that track. People go to the doctor, and it's becoming more personalized today, the same as nutrition. And in actual fact, that is, if you go back to the Greeks, okay, if you go back to the Greeks, that's what medicine was. It was nutrition for the body. It was your food that you eat is really the medicine to help you.
Yeah. So starting a business today with all the experience that you've had, let's talk about just some advice for some people maybe watching this YouTube. What do you got to look for in a business today?
Well, it's got to be recession proof. And, recession proof to me is it's got to survive through those ups and downs, the governments and interest rates and everything that happens. And the great thing about, when you're looking at a business is that, yes, you could have the right products, but it is also the model. And when I first looked at this early model back in 1991, it was one of those models that people talked about, and they said, "Well, that's not real sort of business. That's sort of that funny," and they called it multi-level marketing. It's that funny business. And I said, "Well, no, hang on a second. It's like every other business. Every other business is multi-level. You've got the CEO, then you've got the general managers, and then you've got their managers, and then you've got all the people that do all the work down here. So that's what happens. The difference is in choosing a model like this, it was the ability for you to choose what you wanted to do. If you want to make some part-time money, no problem. You want to make some career-type money, no problem, depending on what you do and what you're focused on. And so I initially, and I said to you that I wanted to cover my living costs from my own resources. Back 35 years ago, that was $10,000. $10,000 a month, is what I needed to cover my living costs from my own resources to be financially free. It took me 8 months to get to that position. I was making money on the way through. So my first month I made $2,000, but then it continued to increase. But it comes back to depending on what you focus on. Whatever you focus on is what you get. Where your energy is plugged into is where that happens. And so for me, I looked at this business back then like a normal traditional business. I said to myself, okay, I'm the CEO. I got to find my key people. Who are my key people to run my corporation or my business? And
product's one thing, Kim. So you want a quality product, and you did talk about structure. And I suppose if I use structure / distribution, I mean, that's another thing. So, I mean, for me to go out and manufacture my own, whey protein product, I mean, I don't know if I'm going to do that, get it all approved and put it out there versus, and then who do I sell it to and how do I sell it and how do I distribute it? It's not that easy. So to align yourself again in this industry, distribution's a big one as well. Global.
Look, yeah, and at that time, look, I chose this company mainly because a referral, mainly because of my best friend. He said, really, this company's been operating now for 11 years. It's one of the top nutrition companies in the world. Back then, it was in 11 countries. And I thought, wow, you mean I can do business in these 11 countries? And he said, yeah, you don't have to be here. You could have multiple streams of income coming in from each different country, not just locally. You could work locally, but build internationally. So I didn't have to have an office. I didn't have to worry about products or research and development. I didn't have to worry about, paying anybody. I didn't, everything was looked after. So all I had to do was to build the structure, was to look for the key people, to build what I wanted.
To get involved and sell the products and build your own business. So essentially, I think you were the recruiter of your own distribution system. Is that
well, yeah. Really, it's the same as every business.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what people have got. If you've got a really great product, whatever it is that you come up with a great product, nothing happens until you find the right people.
Yeah.
I mean,
so it's almost like if you were like building a car company like BMW. If I gave you the BMW Corporation and I came to Australia and said, Kim, what would you look for?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'd look for, first of all, I'd look for that one person for the whole of Australia that wants to own that distribution, network. And then that person needs to be able to recruit each of the dealerships that put out the car, so that you've got a dealership model. And those dealerships would then have to employ their sales managers, want to recruit the salesmen to sell the cars or the BMWs all the way through, so that everybody's making some money on the way through. The car salesman, the sales manager, the dealership, and of course the franchisor of that BMW.
Marketing managers and like finance managers and service managers, all the key people you got to get in place first.
And it's the same.
You wouldn't go out and find customers, you get the infrastructure set up.
Look, absolutely. You've got to get that set up in the first place, and you've got to find those people. That's the great thing about this model is what you focus on. Like, for example, you focus on going and getting customers, congratulations, that's what you get. If you focus on finding your key general managers, they will then go and focus on finding their managers and their salespeople to build the business. And
Kim, this has just been a really insightful, 25 minutes that we've spent together. I'm gonna look forward to having another conversation with you if you got more that you can elaborate on this, like episode 2, episode 3. Let's come back to this in a short period of time to find out more, particularly for the people who may be interested in just getting involved, and maybe you can give them some more insight on how to get started, what to look for, where not to go, where to go. Let's continue this a little bit later. You okay with that?
I sure am. And look, one of the things I'd like to say is I want your input too, because you've been one of the great instigators in my business in helping me. And one of the key things that I can share is personal development. And you're one of those people that really understand personal development. So I can, maybe ask you to come in with some of those philosophies, because that's, we all got the same product, the same marketing plan. We have a different you factor.
Yeah. Well, let's continue our conversation again a little bit later. But Kim, thanks for today, and we'll speak again real soon.
Absolutely. Thank you.